From YouTube's World News headquarter in Berlin, The Lately Show with Florian Strzeletz.
Welcome back to The Lately Show, our international edition, where we usually take a look over the fence almost every time with me, your TV's Florian Strzeletz. I was just doing my New York Times crossword puzzle, but I read before about a guy living in Washington DC and part-time in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. He seems to be the President of the United States, although it is not really clear if he really knows that he's the President of the United States. But this guy, let's call him Donald Trump, thinks his ancestor Obama personally taped all of his communication. And although everybody's telling him that no US president is able to do this because monitoring people can only be done by the Justice Department, but Donald doesn't give a fuck because he has her truth powerfulest weapon, lying on Twitter. I wonder if there's some kind of manual usually given to the president to guidance him through his time with all the do's and don'ts. Oh, there has been one? Oh, Donald hasn't read it yet. Because it has more than 300 pages and it is not written with only 140 letters per page. That's too bad. But let's get back to my crossword. I was missing another word for a bad form of government where a country is bloodily ruled by one person, likely called the leader.
Unterdessen treibt Erdogan die Einführung eines Präsidialsystems in der Türkei weiter voran. Er unterzeichnete den Entwurf für eine Verfassungsreform, die dem türkischen Staatsoberhaupt deutlich mehr Macht verleihen würde. Als Termin für die geplante Volksabstimmung darüber nannte Erdogan den 16. April. Kritiker sehen die Türkei auf dem Weg in eine Diktatur.
That's the word I was looking for, dictatorship. Oh my god, what the hell is going on in Turkey? Last year we had a revolt, obviously initiated by Erdogan himself, to arrest thousands of people and to jail hundreds of journalists. And before that, Erdogan brought the media and the justice system in line, like in a bad form of government, where a country is bloodily ruled by one person likely called the leader, also known as dictatorship. And Erdogan is doing everything for becoming the leader by doing a democratic referendum, become the leader of Turkey, like a dictator. Thankfully, all this campaigning for his referendum is only in Turkey, so we don't see any Turkish member of the government campaigning here in Europe.
Der Streit mit der Türkei über Wahlkampfauftritte ihrer Minister in Deutschland nimmt an Schärfe zu. Der türkische Präsident Erdogan sprach nach der Absage mehrerer Veranstaltungen von Nazi-Methoden. Kurz vorher hatte Bundesaußenminister Gabriel noch an beide Seiten appelliert, die Konfliktthemen nicht gegeneinander aufzurechnen. Erdogans heutige Äußerung stieß auf Empörung, unter anderem in der Union.
What the hell? Okay, Erdogan and his government are campaigning in Europe for their referendum to change their democracy to a dictatorship? Does that mean that Angela Merkel is going to campaign in summer in Britain because there are about 50,000 Germans working in Great Britain? Or does Martin Schulz has to go to the Ballermann in Mallorca to gain votes, mostly drunken votes? I guess not, because Erdogan has to do this because it seems he's not getting enough yes votes for his referendum. Most of the people are going to vote no, because no one likes dictatorships, except dictators. So he's hoping to get more yes votes from in Europe living people with Turkish origin, which is fucking unbelievable because he wants Europeans to vote yes to a dictatorship in Turkey, although only the Turkish people have to suffer the consequences of this. And even more unbelievable that many people with Turkish origins are fighting for a yes here in Europe. And after demonstrating for a dictatorship in Turkey, they all go back home knowing that they are all free because they live in a democracy. Something they are willingly to take away their friends and families in Turkey. And Erdogan tries to drive a wedge in the Turkish society in Europe between the people who are totally loving Europe and those people he is telling that Europe doesn't like them, that they are left behind by their governments, something Donald Trump has done also to the Americans. By telling the angry white men that they were left behind and not wanted by Washington, and that only he, Donald Trump, can make them great again. I know Europe, and especially Germany, wasn't always good by helping people to get fully integrated into society, but everybody forges his own destiny. In the end, it depends on every single being to have the will and to take the fight to become a part of the society. Integration isn't a fast food restaurant. Integration is a long-running thorny marathon, but with a great goal to open so many doors to so many opportunities. To be in Europe, to be in Germany, is an unbelievable great chance for everybody. And we all, the new ones, the old ones, the foreign ones, the returning ones, have to work hard for this, to keep this, because it is always easier to abandon democracy like Turkey at the moment. Don't let us get divided just because an idiot thinks that fascism works greater for him than democracy works for his people. An idiot who calls everyone who resists a Nazi, although he knows that he is the Nazi.
Bunlar Nazi kalıntısı, bunlar faşist, bunu böyle biliniz.
And you can also replace the name Erdogan with Trump, Orban or Le Pen. States like the Netherlands prohibit campaigning for the Erdogan dictatorship in the Netherlands. Germany wasn't quite sure what to do. We did our "we don't know what to do, let's do not talk about it, it will go away someday" thing, which we always do. Erdogan himself stopped campaigning in Europe, not because we appeased him, because he got what he wanted. Media attention and more media attention. And if there's one thing a dictator loves, then it is media attention. But why in the hell we Germans did our "we don't know what to do, let's do not talk about it, it will go away someday" thing again? Erdogan is imprisoning hundreds of journalists and killed people who resist his dictatorship. And everything we did was like nothing, a few diplomatic words and that's it. Mostly because we were afraid of Turkey cancelling the refugee deal and that Europe will face a second huge wave of refugees. But first of all, Turkey needs the money from the refugee deal. The Turkish economy is struggling and Erdogan needs every single cent from the billions Europe pays to Turkey for the refugee deal. So it's saber rattling with blunt sabers. On the other side, if Erdogan cancels the refugee deal and brings all the refugees from the Syrian border to the Greece border, maybe it would be a chance for Europe to handle this better than last time, maybe our chance to shine. But only looking away when a democracy falls on Turkey is not an option. Because the Turkish people are a proud nation with so many great people. And especially we Germans have a long relation with Turkey. We are like an old couple, an odd couple. One time we love each other, next time we like to strangle each other, but in the end we need each other. And building up a dictatorship never ends well. Erdogan can secure his power with brutality, but in the end he will fail like every dictator before. People always believe in one thing, and that is freedom. And that is the final word in my New York Times crossword puzzle, which is missing. Another word for being independent, not being oppressed, with 7 letters. That is freedom. The Lately Show. Join or never mind.